This is the oldest historical document known to man. It talks about King Narmer coming from the Nile, going up north of the Nile. They call it in Africa, actually the poles are kind of turned around. So Upper Egypt is actually in the south and Lower Egypt is in the north. So he came up from the south and unified Upper and Lower Egypt, establishing the first dynasty. And this is the story of how he did that. So when we look at this history from 3150 BC to 2021, it's only 5,000 years. So think about that. If we've been on this planet for 200,000 years, people with 2 hands, 2 feet, a heart, and a mind, just like you and I, just as smart, just as dreamy, just as loving, just as vain, have been on this planet for 200,000 years. But we only know about the past 5,000 years. That's only 2.58% of our human story. Like, we know basically nothing about our history as us as human beings on this planet. Nothing. And if you do this based upon your own life, if I only knew 2.58% of my own story, I will only know the past 10 months of my life. So, and you can find that out by taking your age, multiplying it by 12 and timesing it by 0.0258. And just think about that. If you only knew 2.58% of your story, you probably won't even know more than a year of your life. And how much of the life-changing experiences you had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when you was a child, you wouldn't know. So when we go and we talk about this history, it's important to note that we know very little about our story as human beings. Very, very, very little. And this idea of racism is only within the past 500 years. Matter of fact, the theories that made us white, black, Indian, Asian, it's only a few hundred years old, a very small amount of our story. So while it is great to, yes, we need to develop these different stories, we got to put this in context of all of us as being human beings, just trying to figure out our lives in this world. Like, simple as that. That's all we're doing. So I always like to start in Egypt, because it is the oldest, most advanced culture known to man in the world. And you would see it recognized in the Bible. You would see it recognized by many of the European scholars. A lot of the European and Greek scholars studied in Egypt. Aristotle, like, he basically took a lot of the information that he wrote about from the Library of Alexandria in Egypt, but he studied. Socrates, Plato, a lot of them were outcasts in Greeks because they were teaching a foreign knowledge. And that knowledge came from this place in Egypt, which was in Africa. So this whole debate about the skin tone, like, they were Africans, like literally, it's in Africa. Egypt is in Africa. it's in Africa. They didn't have blonde hair, blue eyes. Like, it was in Africa. And if you look at their stories, and there's so many stories. And Denise, I know you talked about stories. There are a lot of stories about different gods in Egypt and different kings and all that. That can, it's amazing. So I strongly encourage you to take a look at this information. Matter of fact, this right here, I use this to talk about, I guess, the skin tone of these people. This is the only statue of King Tut found in his tomb. But for some reason, we talked about his mama and him looking like this, but the only statue of him in his tomb looks like that. And then his grandmother is called Queen Tai, and she has a fro. So when they show King Tut in the Egyptians, like, it don't make sense, because even in Egypt, like dynasties were based upon bloodlines, like royalty in Europe. These dynasties were royal bloodlines. So you will see Queen Tai here, and Nefertiti was most likely a niece of her, and King Tut is her grandson. So if grandma had a fro, Nefertiti wasn't completely blonde hair, blue-eyed, and King Tut wasn't either. Like, it's like not possible. So like, but that's the story we're kind of told, because people illustrate things based upon their perspective, and that's a human thing. It's what people do. Is what people do. But a lot of the foundation, I'm not going to go too much into Egypt because you say you want to just touch on some of these. Like, this is actually our modern judicial system laid out. If you look at this, you will see the judge. It looks like prosecutor. You got the scales of justice, the defendant, and also the jury. It's actually called the weighing of the heart ceremony, and they have 42 decorations, which the 10 commandments was actually taken out of. But this is our judicial system, even with the down to the pillars that you see in front of most courthouses. Like, it's there thousands of years ago. The Zodiac Astrology, our calendar, 365 days a year plus the leap year. And things like Scorpio and Leo and Gemini, like, these were developed thousands of years in Egypt. Our understanding of the senses, we say there's 5 senses, but we know there's more, because thought is definitely a sense. Because we know that when, you ever had like some shoes you like or a car you like, and then all of a sudden you start seeing it everywhere? It's because our thoughts change our perception of the world. So this symbol that a lot of us see all the time is actually one of the powerful symbols of protection, detailing our ability as human beings to sense the world. Because if we can hear a car coming, we can get out the way and protect ourselves. So hieroglyphs were a very high science, to where they use symbols. Like, when we look at the cross, automatically we think of Christianity, died for our sins, the sun is risen, resurrection. Those ideas of symbology, they took a whole language and made that. So hieroglyphs was that language of symbols that they developed. So a very simple symbol like this, that means protection, also had layers of understanding of the senses. So they had medicines. Look at the prosthetic limbs they had. You see the color of that limb. They practiced safe sex back then. They had yoga, martial arts. So there are so many amazing inventions in Egypt. That's why it's important to highlight it and highlight the stories of that civilization, because so much of what we know of today comes from the very first, oldest, most advanced culture that we ever known. From stilettos to wigs to cosmetics to makeup, a lot of that stuff was way back when. But Egypt is only one. Actually, back then we call river valley civilizations, and you can look this up, ancient river valley civilizations, and you will learn about the Nile River Valley civilization. You'll learn about the Tigris Euphrates, which the Sumerians and Mesopotamians. You learn about the Indus Valley civilization in India. In China, you have the Yellow River and the Wan River. And America, you hear about the I forgot the name of the river, but the Mayans and Aztecs, it was in that area. So definitely look up the story of the Sumerians. We know back in the day, I don't know if they teach us anymore in school, because people say they don't, but Gilgamesh was from the Sumerians, and the Sumerians is known as a African population, like one of the oldest. Before the Mesopotamians, there were the Sumerians, and they wrote the first epic poem. So India, you have the Indus Valley civilization. And they were so amazing. Like they literally had indoor flushing toilets. Like some of us can remember the we call outhouses, where you had to go out your house to go to the bathroom. Like thousands of years ago, they had indoor flushing toilets. So we think that this idea of modern history is a straight line where we're the most advanced people known to man. That's not necessarily the case. And we can't say we're the most advanced human beings because we only know 2.58% of our human story. So, and there's evidence of things that we're just learning now, that we can see now that we know it. We look back at these cultures like, oh, yeah, they knew that. Oh, because we can see it in this, these artifacts and the things, like they knew that. Okay. And another amazing story, like India, oh my God, they like have stories out the wazoo for you. So you can look up Hinduism, you can look up the Vedas. There's a huge epic poem. Start with an M. It's like the story of India. It's not coming to my mind right now. Somebody knows it, please put it in the chat. But it talks about Krishna. Actually, the Bhagavad Gita, which was like, I guess you could say the Hindu Bible, is an excerpt from that epic story. And you'll look at these gods, Kali, Shiva. This is the oldest religion known to man. And you see that their gods are blue. Some people may be familiar with the term blue-black, where they say that you're so black, you're blue. Like, their gods are blue. So it's interesting when you really go into it, and really understand this. So I'm gonna go through this. Even in China, a lot of the first dynasties, the Shang and Zai dynasties, you'll hear about this African presence. Matter of fact, there was a study done. Actually, this guy right here, Bodhidharma, he's an amazing person to tell a story about. Definitely him. He actually brought Shaolin Kung Fu to China. And he's the founder of Zen Buddhism. Brought that to China. So yeah, definitely look him up in his story. But there was a study done, and this is the actual study. How much time I got? Yeah, we got to wrap up. So where they did a study and found that all the Chinese are descendants from African ancestors. Like the people everybody came out of Africa. Like we're all Africans, like all. And that's why I keep saying enslaved Africans, because we're literally all Africans if you trace it back a little further. At the end of the day, we're human, period. We're human beings, 2 hands, 2 feet, a heart, and a mind. These little cultural differences, these belief differences, this phenotype differences, like we all got love. We all got challenges and personal challenges and mental health issues and parent challenges. That's the majority of our life. So those are some things to discuss. In America, you'll have what you call the Olmecs. The Olmecs was the oldest civilization known in America. And they built these huge 70-ton heads. And if you look, you will see them with the nose, and they look like they got locks. And they got these heads they found all throughout the Amazon. These were the progenitors of the Mayans, Incas, and architects. And just like you will see these pyramids all across the world. Pyramids in Mexico, similar to the pyramids in Egypt. Remember I told you how Egypt laid the foundation for our calendar, 365 days a year. This pyramid right here has 365 steps. to the top. So these ancients had things down to a science that's just mind-blowing when you take some time to look at them. So the story of the Mayans, the Mayans were like, if you look at their artwork, they were very diverse too. You would see people of all shapes and skin tones in their artwork. Many of their guys, like this guy, Ituan, he literally, like, it's a black guy with the jaguar coat on. And you look around, you see everybody like respecting this man. And this is Mayan art. And you can look this up. And Mayans had writings. Like, they kind of dismissed the fact that they had writings by calling them codices. But you can look and see that you see all different types of color people. They call them Mayan codices. Like, look it up. And they've had their own stories and their gods. So every culture has their stories. So you can pick them up and find them out and share them with the kids on all different levels because they have these stories that are out there. So I know Nubia. One thing about like Ethiopia, Nubia, Axum, Kush, a lot of us are raised in the Christian tradition and Christianity. And we kind of think of, when earlier I talked about how these ideas of white supremacy, Western Christianity, and capitalism came into being. Christianity was a very diverse religion at the beginning of it. It wasn't until the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD where the Romans consolidated the understanding of Christianity as we know of. And from there, that's when Protestant Reformation came in, and we have many centuries after that, where we have the Methodists and Lutherans and Anglicans. But before the Roman Catholic Church gave us this Western Christianity, there were Orthodox Christianity. Matter of fact, one of the oldest Christian empires is in Ethiopia. Matter of fact, the Ptolemaic Dynasty, one of the oldest royal dynasties in the world that come from King Solomon, is in Africa. Matter of fact, you know them. You probably heard of them. As you'll see, they built these churches. Literally, these are stone churches built straight down into the ground in Ethiopia. And the Ptolemaic dynasty, that bloodline that attaches King Solomon, King David, all these stuff, ended just a few years ago with this guy Haile Selassie, who original name is Ras Tafari. You know, Rastafarians believe in, this is what they believe, Rastafari. You could believe because in the Bible it says that King David would always have a son on the throne. So when he passed away a few years ago, they're like, no, the Bible said he always has son and he's still alive. And because he was literally descended from all the way back, Queen of Sheba and Menelik. And it was the longest, oldest dynasty, Christian dynasty in the world, in Africa. Just look up the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and you'll learn a lot about that, or just the Ptolemaic dynasty, and then you will see more about Ethiopia. We talked about the Benin Empire in Benin, and Mansa Musa. This is one video I do want to watch. It show you how advanced they were. Let me see if I make sure that y'all can hear, because I heard last time earlier y'all wasn't able to hear what I was talking about the last video. So let me share this, and then we're gonna close out for some questions before we get out of here.
This context that the Arabs arrive, not as marauding destroyers, but sometimes as saviors.
You know,
Abderrahman brought cutting-edge technology for irrigation to Spain. Almost immediately, the landscape was transformed. Palm trees, lemon and orange groves, avocados, artichokes and pomegranates, none of which had been seen in Europe. Because of Abderrahman's sophisticated trade network, this new agriculture created huge wealth. And these riches were used to build one of the greatest cities in the world. While the inhabitants of London were still living in wooden houses, the people of Cordoba had built a cosmopolitan city with a population of over 100,000, the largest settlement in Europe. Reports from European visitors to Cordoba describe a city with 70 libraries and over 300 public baths. The accounts tell of houses with running water and roads illuminated by streetlights. Professor Antonio Fernandez Puertas has spent his life studying the Alhambra. He's discovered that the whole of the building, from the ground plan to the wall decoration, is based around one single ratio. The King of Granada asked his architects to harmonise each and every space within the palace according to a single set of proportions, a family of rectangles, each related to the other. The key to the Alhambra's design is the simple relationship between the side of a square and its diagonal. If we use the diagonal to make a rectangle, and then the diagonal from that rectangle to make another, we get a progression of rectangles. The fourth rectangle is double the size of the first, and the diagonals in this sequence are in fact the square roots of 2, 3, 4 and 5. A magical sequence. Every part of the intricate network of spaces, all the courtyards, the hallways, the placement of every column was designed using inspired variations of this proportional system. Nothing violated this incredibly elaborate system. The Alhambra is a triumph of mathematics as much as it is of aesthetics. Mathematical ingenuity is the root of its beauty.
Is that amazing? Like, literally. And these are the people that ruled in Europe for 700 years. And when they were defeated, the Portuguese were like, in Spanish, was like, where did they come from? Where's that information? Let's go to Africa and find it. And that started the beginning of the presentation that we had earlier today. So I know we got to get out of here. And I just want to thank everyone. If you have any final questions or comments, feel free to raise your hand and I'll take them until they kick us out. And somebody says we got to go.
I have a question.